Now, the first thing is water. Obviously comes in varying shades of blue, green, brown, all sorts. I tend to, in my painting, go for a kind of almost green hued base to it. So this is a base of Temple Guard blue. Now you want to create some depth. You want to look like it. You want it to look like it's fairly deep water. So Sotek green is it's a sort of bluey green, and you want to follow the outline of the gap of where the water is. Don't do a circle. That'll look strange. So you can see I've followed the sort of general shape of the pool, if you like, or lagoon, or whatever it is, or whatever you're working on. So it's just a layer of Sotek green. Again, keep it thin. You might want to do 2 or 3 layers. I think I did at least 3 layers with the Temple Guard blue, and then same again with Sotek green. Now, once you've done that, you need to blend the edges in. You need to feather it in. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know the technique I'm using, although I haven't on this occasion used the glazing medium. This is just with water. Reason being that it's just for speed. Glazing using the glazing medium just takes a little bit longer. I just wanted to get into this and show you guys what to do, but it's come out quite nicely anyway. So what I've done is just do a few layers just to feather that Sotek green in. You could, if you want the pool, the deep section a bit narrower, then you can glaze the other way using Temple Guard blue, but it's easier going dark over light rather than light over dark, so use a bit of Sotek green. So that's softened it up quite nicely, as you can see there. And now what we want to do is we want to darken that slightly. Again, we want to go into so you just create a slight gradient. So we've got a bit of Sotek green, and then the colour roughly opposite on the colour wheel will be a red. So we've got a bit of Mephiston red, just a tiny drop. I used what was left on the brush after putting it on the palette, but I've used it very, very thinly. When you mix them together, it creates a sort of darker tone of the Sotek green without resorting to the harshness of mixing it with black. You save that step for later. So like an intermediary step. So adding a bit of black in there. So you can see that's darkened up quite nicely towards the centre now. Now you want to do the outside, where it's closer. If you imagine the surface, the mud and sand and whatnot under the water, it gets lighter the shallower it is. So you want to add a bit of shabty bone to your original Temple Guard blue and just sort of glaze that onto the outside, onto the very the shallowest parts. Want to do a couple of thin layers of this and just build it up gradually. You can see it's slowly starting to take shape. There's another layer on there. There we go, that's better. But yeah, you can go quite bright if you want to, but I would advise against going really, really bright, because obviously you've got reflections to paint in afterwards as well. So you don't want to take away too much from those, so don't go up to pure white when you're doing this step. Okay, so that's looking not too bad now. Now we've got Temple Guard blue, and now we're just defining the ripples. So you just sort of cross back and forth between the light and the dark. You can see where there's a ripple, it changes how the water is viewed, if you like. So even though it's going over a dark section, because there's a ripple there, it's changed the lighting so you see more of the base blue. And you'll see in a minute that we do the same with the dark mix as well, the Sotek green, and you sort of extend that into the Temple Guard blue. So it's all about, it's just creating an illusion. That's all you're doing. It's a flat, solid, opaque surface, and you're trying to make it look like a ripply, shiny, see-through one. So you can do this on either side of the ripples. It doesn't really matter, excuse me, as long as you're reasonably consistent with it. This is just where the light is hitting. Okay, so there's a bit more Sotek green on the darkest sections. This is just starting to define where I want the main reflection, which is the brightest point, the sort of shiny bits which really sell it. Yeah, you can just see there. Got in with the Sotek, the Temple Guard blue, sorry, and just defining where that's where I want my highlights to be, my reflections. So don't worry about being too neat at this stage. They will get tidied up, and it's quite easy to tidy them up with a bit of your original Sotek green and Mephiston red mix, and obviously with a drop of black if you're going right over the deep sections as well. You can see already it's starting to look shiny when it catches that, when it's not catching the actual lamps that I've got. So here we go. This is using the darker mix just to tidy those up, tidy those highlights up, and then what we'll do is we'll extend that out onto the Temple Guard blue. Okay, on this bit you can see I'm just adding in a few more shadows. It's just a case of refining, and go with your gut. If it starts to look shiny, carry on with what you're doing. We're not trying to be technically accurate here. This probably isn't how water works. On the original, somebody asked me today on Facebook, why was the water glowing? Because water doesn't do that. Obviously water doesn't glow blue, it doesn't emit light. And my response was that it just looked cool. And that's the whole point. Just go with something that looks cool. So now we've got Temple Guard blue again with a little bit of dead white in it, or rotten white. Is it rotten white? Yes, rotten white from Vallejo. And again, we're just refining the reflections and just brightening them up. So now I'm adding in, it's almost like secondary and tertiary light sources. But there aren't really any light sources. This is, again, it's very heavily based on the rule of cool. So you're trying to get that sort of gut reaction from people that something is shiny. So I've got the main highlights going down the middle, and I'm adding to either side as well, going into the temple guard blue. Here we can see exactly how thin my white and temple guard blue mix is for this step. Very, very thin indeed. And this will now, when you start getting to these brighter stages, this will very quickly start to look shiny. And keep pushing on with these, and just keep adding them until it looks shiny. Keep smoothing them. Just layer them on. You want the paint very, very thin, so you can do several layers if you need to. Just build it up. Don't worry about going to an absolute pure white, because we do that in a later stage. We'll do that afterwards. See, here we go. This is pure white. Still very, very thin. The trick here is just keeping these highlights quite concentrated. But using paint so thin, it's still probably going to be slightly transparent. So the very final step will be just a little dot of not very thin white paint. You can just see I'm just sort of, because it's so thin, I'm able to smooth previous layers as well. I mean, the smoother you can get it, brilliant, but just worry about placement. This one was a bit faster than the previous one, so the placement is slightly off, I think. It's not a completely straight line. Because it's fairly simple ripples, the reflections do go in straight lines, hitting each ripple, and then avoiding where it dips down. But the rougher the water, the more widely spread your reflections will be, because the water's breaking it up. See, this now is, there we go, dots of almost undiluted white paint for the very sharpest, brightest highlights. And then you can see there, that really just immediately stands out. I mean, at that point, you'll already be able to see that it's shiny, but at that point you'll know if it inherently looks shiny, and then if it does, you can, if you've missed anything, or if you need to go back and smooth a few things and tidy things up, then fine. You can absolutely do that. Once you've got the knowledge of how the colours interact and go together, then it's a fairly simple process. So, dot of white on the bubbles. The bubbles are tricky on this one because they're quite, incredibly small. There was originally supposed to be a foot or an ankle, sort of as if something was stepping into the water for this base. So again, it's just a case of refining here and there. And obviously what you've got to remember as well, there's generally a ripple of water around where it touches a surface. So what we'll do in a minute is we'll just do a line of white all the way around the outside, where the water, the surface tension, is almost recreating the effect of surface tension. And there, that's, if you want to leave it at that step, you can. That's come out quite well. I think the lamps hit it a little bit much, but you'll see when it goes down. There we go. So that looks like shiny, ripply water, which is exactly what we were aiming for. And that's the sped up footage of adding the section around the outside. I really hope this has been useful. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notifications bell, share it around. Right, thanks very much everybody. Bye bye.